pop stars, welcome to this week's episode of the Popcorn Wind Down. I'm Eddie.
And I'm Tammy.
Thank you for joining us. This week's episode is sponsored by Fairy Tales, an adult entertainment VR system designed to turn your dreams into reality, at least for a few hours. You provide the story and a bit of background and let them do the rest. For more info, hit them up at adult.fairytales. Tammy, are you into the VR craze? You want like a VR headset and all of that?
Absolutely not. Never been into it, never been interested in trying it.
I'm on the fence. I don't know if I think the reason I haven't is because I think it would be more of a time suck, and social media can turn into that for me, so I try to stay off of it. Not just because I'm so much against it, but I just start scrolling. Before you know it, you've scrolled half a day away. So I'm thinking VR would be something else like that. I don't know, but we will see. Anyway, I know people tend to love it. All right. So this week we take a journey through time to I know I'm about to mispronounce this, so forgive me, the Joseon dynasty of Korea, where we encounter Queen Hwa-Yreon. Sorry, another mispronunciation, as she finds her way through terrible grief, all the while trying to rein in her spirited, rambunctious sons, the Grand Princess. It doesn't take her long to realize that this may be easier said than done, especially when one of them must become the new crown prince, and everyone and their mother is literally coming for her and the throne. So Tammy, what did you think of Under the Queen's Umbrella? Was it a royal flush or a royal flop?
That's a poker reference.
Yeah.
It was a royal flush then. I loved it. Now, of course, I'm the one who suggested doing Under the Queen's Umbrella. It was one of the best dramas that I have seen, especially for a K-drama. Now, I'm the one who watched over like 150 different Asian dramas. And yeah, I loved it. I've watched it multiple times in the original, like Korean, as well as with the English dub. Like I go back and forth, but I've watched it like 10 to 15 times already, over and over again. But I do want to know, how did you feel about Under the Queen's Umbrella?
I'm not generally a fan of period pieces, Asian or American. I don't know why. For someone who loves history, you would think I would love to watch more historical films like this or more historical series like this. I don't know. I think I'd rather read the book or just read about it itself. I don't know why that is. Kind of weird, huh? Not the more I think about it. But it was better than I thought it would be, than I initially thought. And once I got into it, I really enjoyed it. And it was an old school drama as far as the length and the time. Like, it was one of those 16 episodes, each episode running over an hour. So I was thankful for the dubs, that it had been dubbed. I was fully prepared to watch it in Korean. But here's the thing, even though I dubbed it, I still had the subtitles on. I think it's just a preset now where it just the subtitles. So, and it's kind of funny looking at the differences sometimes between what they're saying on the dubs and what is coming up on the subtitles. But so I when I first turned it on, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not in the mood for this. I'm not feeling this right now. But as it got closer to time, I what I did is like, okay, I set aside a whole day, and I said I need to get through at least half of it, so that way I can pace it out to have it done by the time we reviewed it. And I did. And as it was going on, it just got better and better with each episode. There were parts of it that were a bit lifetimey, but the drama and the intrigue carried it through, and it really overshadowed those lifetime moments. So yeah, it was much better than I thought, and I actually found myself enjoying it. And I finished it earlier than the schedule, because it gets to a point where you're just like, wow. Um, the So I actually sped up the pacing of it. And then there were some parts where I could just be like, yeah, let me hit the fast forward through this. This is a little, yeah. But yeah, so I love the queen. Despite the bad makeup job, like God, her makeup was bad. Um,
It was
I'm
very
like,
caked on. It was very caked on.
it was very caked on, and at parts you could see where it was really, really white, and then you could see her natural skin tone. Like they didn't do a great job blending. And then if you're like me, I have very oily skin. So when I wear makeup, I have to put on a matte primer. And that way it helps absorb the oil. Because if not, within an hour or two, my face will look like I'm just sweating makeup or something. So at times I'm like, ooh, y'all could have done a better job because you could just see the oil or the sweat, maybe a combination of the both, because I know it couldn't have been easy wearing those heavy ass clothes um, for that time period. So I was just like, oh, they could have done a little bit, they could have done a better job with her makeup. And as I looked, she was really the only one that seemed to have that problem, that bad makeup job. And I'm just like, ah, why y'all do my queen like that? But that's just nitpicking. But um, I loved her character. Like she was really compassionate, and she was the epitome of what you would want in a ruler. She was compassionate, she was empathetic, she was kind, she was generous, she was fair. She knew when to wield her power, she knew when not to. Um, she ruled, she wanted to be respected rather than feared, which was the opposite of the Queen Dowager, who was just like the perfect fucking villain to me. Like the Queen
Yes.
Dowager, that bitch was ice cold. Like she had no fucks to give about
No
nobody.
heart. No heart.
No heart, no fucks, no sympathy, nobody, not even her own damn son. Like, god dang. Yeah, she was cool. Yeah. But so what did you think about the queen?
I love the queen. I think the queen is the queen and the grand princess is the reason why like I absolutely fell in love with the story. But I think that she was the strongest character in the show. Obviously because it's named under the queen's umbrella, but I think she was just the strongest character, and exactly what you said is the reason why I loved her. Like I love the relationship that she even had with the concubines. To know that you're the one who is in charge of all of the women that sleep with your husband and that had kids with him. I'm like, that is freaking crazy. But she was the head of the ladies. So she was the one who was in charge of all the ladies, being that she was queen. And even how she treated the sons that weren't even hers, like her mindset of at the end of the day you all have the opportunity because you are all the king's sons. And while she like would scold her kids because those were her kids, the compassion that she also showed for the other sons, who needed that compassion, whether it was Bogum, who had the most promise but would never get to the highest position just because of who his mother was and the status of his mom, or if it was Simso, who his mom was a pill up until she like kind of realized like how hard she was. And that's not the way that you show love to your son. But I love the relationship that she had with the sons, with the concubines, as well as her husband. I just think that when to see like her husband trusted her more than anyone else, and he knew who she was, and so he let her have free reign because he knew that her intentions were going to be pure. So yeah, so I think she was my favorite character on the show, just for just how amazing she was overall. Like she was an amazing character.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think where you really start to see her compassion, because you first kind of get ahead of her, you kind of see her, it changes because you see her with the first crown prince, her son, who, spoiler alert, dies, and that becomes one of the big mysteries. His death becomes one of the big mysteries and storylines to carry us throughout the entire series. And so you see that, and you kind of see how she's different with him than her other sons. Okay, and you kind of expect it because he's the royal heir, and it kind of brought back the whole spear thing or whatever, but it wasn't that bad. and you see her scolding her sons, um, and just, her having to chase them down. And you don't really get an idea. And then you see her, I think her and the Queen Dowager go at it at first. So you think, oh, this is just going to be a power struggle. And it doesn't seem like initially that it's going to have that much substance, right? And then where you really start to get a feel for who the queen is. Um, because it seems like initially, especially after her son gets sick and she dies, it seems like, okay, she's just trying to secure the throne and make sure it stays within her family. And when I say family, I mean between her sons. But when you really start to get a glimpse and realize that she's not that shallow, that there's so much more to her, that there is the compassion there, is when she finds out her son Muwan's secret, or Grand Prince Juan's secret. And that is that, he is not living his authentic self, that he is trans. Um, and he and for that time period, it's a shock. And at first, when he's in the castle, or when he's in the abandoned part of the palace, I was thinking that he was gay, and that she saw him with another young man. And then I forget what it was, and I was like, okay, if it's not that, then I kind of, before we actually saw it, I figured out, okay, he's dressing like a woman, or and he does this. He goes to escape, like, for a few hours a day, just to put on his makeup, and to just experience a little bit of time just living as his authentic self. And when she first discovers that, she's really shocked, and you're like, how is she going to handle this? And initially, she doesn't do anything about it. She's just like, okay, because of everything that's going on, we have to make sure that he doesn't go back. So she tries talking to him, and he tries, but it's really hard. And so and after she burns it down, it's like you realize why she had to burn it down, because when she realizes that the Queen Dowager was aware, it was like, okay, you can't leave any evidence or any trace of this. And what she does next, when she takes him, when he comes to her and she's like, why did you do this? And she takes him out of the palace, and she takes him to someone that she trusts, and she allows him to dress as his, I don't want to, alternative self, or we'll say his real self. And they do this beautiful portrait of him. um, then it was like, wow, you really get a feel for just what that was. And I thought her reaction was real. It was like she went through that, okay, because she didn't bring it up, and she just realized that this is, her acceptance of it. And so I thought that was like, really, I thought that showed a lot. And then it goes to, like you said, how she deals with the other sons. Even though they're a competition, she doesn't treat them like they're competition for her sons. Like, she doesn't treat them the way the other concubines treat her children, and everyone else in the palace treat her children. Like, you would have thought her children were the sons of concubines and women who her husband had, the products of affairs from her husband, rather than them actually being the legitimate heirs to the throne. Um, and even, and like you say, even the way she treated the concubines, knowing that, hey, these are the hoes who slept with my husband, had little bastard kids with my husband, and now these bitches are coming for me and mine. And yet she still showed compassion, for them. And I was just like, yeah, that's a lot. Like, you and I, we were having a conversation off air where we don't know how we would handle certain. We say what we would do, but you're not really sure what you would do until you put in that situation. I'm pretty sure I don't know if I could be that gracious or that compassionate in that situation, even though that was the rule of the day. Like, especially the more disrespectful those bitches became. It was like, nah, nah, nah. Like, yeah. So, yeah.
I like, yeah, I agree with you with the whole, because I also because I was in episode 2 with Grand Prince Ye Sung, and at first I thought he was gay as well. I was just like, oh shoot, is he gay? Like are we doing this? And then I was just like, oh, then when they revealed, I was just like, oh, I said, I've never seen this. Now I've watched a couple. I'm not a fan necessarily of Korean historical dramas or just Asian historical dramas because their rules just went too far for me. Like I was just like the rule. Some of the rules are very ridiculous, and I have to keep that in mind when I'm watching these shows on like how strict they were on a lot of things. So yeah, I loved how she handled that because it wasn't like automatic, oh my God, I hate this, or automatic, oh, I love this, and you know, yay. Like, no, it wasn't like that. You saw she had to wrap her mind around it before she could step up and do it. But I disagree with you on one thing. So I think that from the jump, she cared about her sons. And I don't think it was necessarily she finally showed attention when she wanted one of them to, you know, finally step up and take the throne or become the crown prince. Because it was a conversation that she had with Queen Yoon when she was like, what would you have done differently? And when you hear the sad, just I was just like, Queen Yoon was like one of the saddest characters because you realize that when the crown prince died and when the queen dowager decided that her son was going to be next in line, and her next step was killing all of the queen's children but one, and making it seem like you were just being so nice on that. So it was so telling the queen, like, your sons are in danger. Like, they're in danger from the jump. When she said, have you been educating them? And she was just like, no. And she was like, why not? And she was like, the reason why you don't educate the rest of the grand princes, because they never had the, you know, proper education, is because you don't want people to think that they are a threat to the crown prince. And then all of a sudden somebody feels that they need to die. So it was like she couldn't even really educate her sons, even though the concubines could fully educate their kids and they could hire tutors for them, but she couldn't do it for hers. So it's kind of like you just let them run amok. And then in a flashback, you saw Queen Yoon did the same thing to her kids. That's the reason why none of her kids were prepared necessarily to take the throne when they implemented that contest, is because she had the same idea. Her kids were rambunctious and they would play around in class and everything like that because you didn't educate the rest of your kids if your oldest was the crown prince. And I'm just like, that's a ridiculous rule because you never take into consideration that your child may die. Like isn't that the whole purpose of a spare? But I feel like they didn't necessarily treat the grand princes like the spares. It was more, I felt in the show that they treated the concubine sons more like the spares than they did the grand princes. Like they
Yeah.
were just there to be there, but it wasn't like they could be next in line. Although the one who ended up becoming the crown prince, he was the most qualified, partly because he did grow up for part of his life outside of the palace, which was against the rules at the time. But I think she cared. It's just the rules were you couldn't care too much because you didn't want to bring too much attention to the rest of your sons because that would put their lives in danger. And she really got to see that when the crown prince got sick.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't mean that she didn't care about her sons. That was always obvious that she loved them and cared about them. I mean that we saw a different side to her. Like that was never in question to me. But for me personally, I saw that it wasn't just her trying to um manipulate, especially, you know, when she makes the deal. It wasn't about her trying all of a sudden showing more interest just because of the contest or because she wanted them to become the crown prince or anything like that. Like you always knew that she cared. Like when she would talk to him, when they would have dinner together, you know, the moments that they would kind of just steal away, and you could tell that those were meant to be private moments, you know. Um, but and also the reason it, and you could tell she cared because she never really told them, and this is going to sound bad, she never really told them the truth. Like she didn't put the pressure on them as to why she was trying to do this, you know. And I think that also helped her to realize who, it also helped her to realize who would be able to handle it, because I think she knew deep down, because like when they told her, like when she found out about Juan, even though he was in the contest, she never told him he couldn't do it. But even though initially, out of all of her four sons, he was the one that seemed like the front runner. But once she knew his secret, and she knew how much pressure and how miserable she would be, she didn't tell him not to enter the contest. She didn't take him out of the contest. But it was just like she tried to, the I can't remember the name of the son that actually becomes crown prince. But it was like,
Songnam.
so now, yeah, she started pushing him more. And I love the fact that you get it's alluded to that Sonam always knew Gisong's secret, or Muan's secret.
No, Gisong. Muan is the other
Gisong,
one.
yeah, Muan's the other one. He always knew Gisong's
Yeah,
secret.
he did.
And but and because the first time, it's like when the brother said, "Where have you been? Have you been away, stealing away with some girl?" And he just kind of looks and is like, "Oh, okay." And then he dusts the powder, because and this is before you really know, he dusts the powder off of his shoulder. And it was just like this quiet understanding between brothers, and he never judged. And I love that, those little subtleties, like you never really needed a conversation between them. Like at the end, when Gisong was leaving the palace, and one brother says, "But it seems like you're going to be gone forever." And he and what was his name again? Soyoung?
Songnam.
Sonam. He and Sonam just exchanged this look, like they know that, if and when he did come back, the visits would be few and far between, because once he got out and started living his life as his authentic self, there was no going back. Like it would pain him too much to have to revert back to his inauthentic self to come back and visit the palace. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
So, but yeah, I get that she always cared about her sons. That was never in question. I love the way that you really, really start to see that care that has always been there, because you like you said, you don't really know how she's going to react to that, especially considering everything that's going on, considering the time. And I love the fact that we saw her initial reaction was one of shock and horror, and like, oh my god, and she just goes and hides in that closet that had always been her hiding place, and just cried her heart out and cried her eyes out. Like we saw her go through the stages of acceptance, and I love that. I think that was a brilliant choice. And as far as the Korean dramas go, I think they've come a long way. Itaewon Class was just a couple of years ago, and when they dealt with the issue or alluded to the issue, they had a woman playing the part of a trans female. And I remember we talked about that. And in this, they actually have a male playing that part. And we see we don't really see him in full dress, but we do see the photo, and or the portrait. And I think, and I love the fact that that as a historical drama, it tackles it from the aspect, and I think more dramas need to do this, Western, K, whatever, to let people know this is not something that's new. It's not a trend. It's not a fad. You've all just like we've always had gay people throughout history. You've always had trans people. It's just they lived a lot like Grand Prince Gisong, their authentic selves, for fear of being ostracized and murdered and all of the other stuff, things that they still have to face today in some situations. So I applaud them for the way that they handled that, and the realistic way in which they told that story. So they definitely get kudos for that. Um, what did you think about, speaking of Grand Prince? What did you think about Grand Prince Sonam?
I loved him. I okay. I actually wrote it down in my notes. And one of the first things I wrote down is I loved when Sungnam walked into class late without a care in the world, and he just did his little bow and went and sat down. Like, y'all already know how I do. Like, I'm good. Or like him knowing that he was supposed to be in school, but instead of going to school, he was riding his horse free. So from there, and then even as you learn his story, knowing that for the first 10 years of his life, he grew up outside of the palace because of the time frame of when he was born and when he was conceived. And so he was taken from his mom when he was a baby. And just and even then, like, you can see with the queen loving her kids and what she had to do in order to get Sungnam back into the palace. And she sent the crown prince in order to like meet his brother, in order for him to take the steps, because he would be the only one that would be able to do it without being reprimanded or getting some real consequences by bringing his brother back. But I like that because it also showed he was more compassionate. He understood how to really take care of the people more. Like when they asked the questions dealing with the people of Joseon, he had more compassionate answers for it, because he understood, because he grew up half of his life outside. So I really love that they kept him authentic to that. Even as going through, when he got his stalker, because that girl was a little stalkerish. But even with that, like, just how smart he was. Like, nobody thought that he could really do it, because he was the rebel and he was willing to beat up anybody who talked bad about his mom. Loyalty. But I loved his character. I really, really loved his character, because I was just like, from the jump, I was like, he's gonna be crown prince, right? Like, there's nobody else. Like, I loved Gisun, but I was just like, nah, like, he can't be crown prince, so it got to be Sungnam, right? He's next in line. Like, it's got to be him. Like, he was just the most compassionate. I really loved his character.
I loved him too. And and she was like, "Has he always been so brisk?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I love the flashbacks, like when he first meets the OG Crown Prince as the kids, and he goes,
Yeah.
"Can you fight?" And
Right?
like one of the first things he asked him was, "Can you fight?" And the Crown Prince was like, trying to be that good big brother. And he's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, yeah." He's like, "Okay, come on," because it's like, "Yeah, can you fight?" And you can see the Crown Prince is thinking, "Well, yeah, all big brothers can fight." And then I was thinking, okay, so the Crown Prince is going to go back to the palace and demand to be taught how to fight, right? No, Sonya had other crowns. Sonya was like, "All right, let's go ahead. Since you my big brother, since I know who you really are now, let's go handle up on these bullies." And when they get beat up, Sonya said, "But I thought you said you could fight."
But even like another thing that I really, really loved was the bond between the brothers. And not just for the grand princess and the crown prince. So you could tell the crown prince was really close to his brothers, really close to Sungnam, and just their bond and how they were. Like, one of my favorite scenes is when the mom calls the grand princes when she decides, like, she wants them to be a consort. And she's calling them, and they're all trying to figure out, like, why is she calling? And then all of a sudden, Sungnam sees the crown prince, and they're yelling across the pond. And they were like, where are you off to? And they're like, to be scolded by mom. And he was just like, just apologize. And they were like, okay, but the smiles on their faces, you could tell, like, they loved each other very, very much. They were really, really close. But yeah, like, you could tell the bond was there from when they first met. I loved it.
Yeah, and also you could tell that even though the others even though they didn't really grow up together initially, that they
Mm-hmm.
were the closest, like, just
Yeah.
because, and they were really, really protective of each other. And knowing that Sunam didn't grow up in the palace, just how protective he was of his brothers, um, and not just the grand princes, not just his immediate brothers, but
No,
like,
just brothers in general. Yeah.
yeah, because Wee Song was the bully of them all, because he had this sense of entitlement. Um, I guess because he was the firstborn or whatever. But it was like, he was always in Wee Song's ass.
Allegedly. Let's put that allegedly.
Allegedly, he was always in Wee Song's ass. Like, he always had his foot on Wee Song's throat, because Wee Song was just an ass.
He was. He
But
was a spoiled little brat. Like, oh gosh.
before we get into that, though, because you mentioned her, the one who becomes the grand princess, she grew on me, because at first I thought, okay, this annoying little bitch, and I thought she was a stalker too. But I think they were like, okay, it's one of those things where you see that character shift, where at first you're not sure what her role is, and then I think once they realized, okay, she is going to be the crown prince, they had to make her bearable or likable. And I like what they did with her. Like, they kept a lot of her original. Like, we know what her problem was Like when her parents were like, "We wish you would." That was so cruel too. I'm like, "Damn, we wish you would just die already." And I'm like, "What the fuck?" Like they were like, "She's supposed to be dead and she keeps on living." And I'm like, "God damn, you hate your child that much?"
But they still, like, let's put it out there for the audience. They still loved her very much. Like it was crazy on how much you saw, like in the end, like they doted on her way more than probably her other two sisters because of her illness.
Yeah. And and because I think that they just kind of raised her in the sense that she wasn't raised traditionally because she wasn't supposed
No.
to live. Like she wasn't supposed to live as long as she did. And so they thought she was going to die. So it was like they just pretty much let her do whatever. Like she was perfect for Sonam in the sense that she was the rebel of her family. You could tell she was really well educated. She was really progressive. She also had that sense of feeling like she needed to stick up for the people. So I love that we got to see that side of her versus how we were first introduced to her. Because I'm like, oh God, this whiny, and if I'm saying this whiny squeaky voice is killing me because I have a whiny squeaky voice. I realize that. But yeah, so she grew on me, and I loved. You got the feeling that she and Sonam were going to be the modernization of the royal family. They were like what Harry and Meghan should have been for the royal family. Um, and because it wasn't because when he told her, like when they found out about the heart condition, and the Queen Dowager thought, oh, he was going to dump her, and he was like, that's okay, we don't need to have kids, right? And he read her journal, and it was like, okay, because he had been raised, and that was one of the thing that you said they were too strict. You really got the sense, and it wasn't just in Asian royalty, but for a long time, and some people still think this way, women, you had sex with women just for procreation. They were just there to make your children, and the more children you had, that's why the kings had concubines. And that was one of the things I appreciate, like you alluded to earlier about the king and the queen's relationship. You can tell that they were really were friends, you know. Um, and it was like, okay, they were friends. He trusted her. She was one of his most respected and trusted advisors. But they were still kind of caught up in that old school. Like you could tell they loved each other, but they didn't have the most romantic relationship. It was more of a business relationship and a friendship and a partnership rather. But with Sonam and the new crown princess, I can't remember her name either. You could see that, okay, you didn't get the feel. I didn't get the feeling that he was going to bring in concubines into that. Like, did you?
Nah, I feel like he gonna break that tradition and be like,
Yeah.
nah, I'm a one woman man.
Yeah, and then because he was like, okay, we don't need kids, and I thought, okay, then that's where and I thought that would be the only way he would bring in a concubine, and it would be no, and it would be one of those old school professional concubine things where it's like where they have to nursemaid, where no, your job is to have this kid, and we're going to raise it. Like if it would have come to that, that's how I felt like it was. And then like and that they didn't just spend time, like they were breaking that tradition or that mode to just spend time together whenever they were trying to have sex or something like that, where because where he reads her diary, and he starts trying to make her wishes come true, and they actually do spend more time together because when she tells him, I don't, she, because you got the feeling she was gonna bounce. It was like, look here, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be with somebody who doesn't like me and who doesn't want to spend time with me, or who only wants to be with me when it's time to have sex or something like that. So I really love that we got that, in K dramas, they're not big on those romantic, they allude to a lot of romantic things. So I was just like, yeah, I love how her character changed and she started to grow on you rather than just be the same. Again, going back to that same shallow person you thought she was, and you really understood why the queen chose her. And she also would help Sonam ease some of the burden. Like she lightened him up. Like she got him out of his head and made him not so serious. You there?
Mhm. Oh,
Yeah.
I was letting you flow. I agree
Oh
with
yeah,
you.
I'm done. Yeah. Like, what did I lose her? So
No. No, I was letting you flow. I agree with you on that. I think the Crown Princess definitely grew on you. And exactly what the Queen explained on the only thing that she had against her, that everybody had against her, was that she was Minister Yoon's daughter, and Minister Yoon was on the side of the Queen Dowager. Well, up until the Queen had a conversation and was like, "Look, you protect my son, I'll protect your daughter. I'll make sure nothing happens to your daughter as long as you make sure nothing happens to my son." And he was just like, "Okay." And that's when you see, like, he really did love, his kids, and he was a good guy. He just happened to be on the wrong side. And that's what I saw. But another couple that I really really loved was Muan and Chowol. It was so like young love kind of thing, like puppy love. On, I don't know necessarily what this is, but yeah, I think I love you as a woman. Like, and she just like, well, I guess I love you too. And all right, well, let's bang it out. Okay, 9 months later, you got a baby. I'm sorry, what? What you want me to do with this? Be like, well, now you're gonna have to learn how to raise it, or you're gonna have to give it up. And you see him like in, I think it's like 2 episodes, really step up in the end, because at first I think he didn't really take it serious, and he didn't really understand the reason why this was going to be a difficult life for him falling in love with a woman who was on the verge of becoming a courtesan, because once you become a courtesan you can't marry her. But to kind of see like, I thought their love story was really cute, but also realistic in a way, even more than the stalkerish of the Crown Princess and Somnam, on having the baby before you get married, and then the Queen kind of having to wrap her mind around that as well, and then seeing how he grew on just having to take care of his daughter. And I was just like, oh, that's so cute. And then when he realized that the nursemaid was the mom, was actually Cho Wol, and wanting to be with her and wanting to marry her, changing his mind from when he said he was going to just make her his concubine, never even thought to just marry the woman from the jump. But I really like that storyline as well, on how that goes through. And the Queen Dowager, I swear, yo, if that woman was not the most evil person that I have seen in a drama in a while. Like, she was more evil than the dad from Itaewon Class. Like, she didn't care who you were. She was all about power and control, and she was willing to kill who she needed to get rid of whoever she needed to, in order to keep the power. Because the only way she had the power was by her son being king. So she'd never do nothing to her son, but she was willing to take out all those grand princes if she need to. Those weren't her grandkids. Those were her obstacles.
yeah, and you got the feeling that, like you said, if she could maintain the power without her son, she would have done it. Like, he was a tool in her belt. He was a power tool, basically, pun intended. But that was it, because once she realized she did not have as much control over him as she thought,
Mm-hmm.
it was like, well, damn it. And you got this. I was just waiting for her to say, because she did tell him, you're only here because I wanted you to be here, and it was just like, okay, so you got the feeling that she could maintain the control and the power without him, then she would have. And I think, and that kind of lets you know about why she went along, even after she found out about Prince Song. So were you surprised that Prince Song was not the king's son?
No, I
I
wasn't
wasn't either.
surprised. I was happy. I was just like, oh shit, ain't that her favorite? And she
And
the one that found out.
yep, but and then and you thought she would blow it up, but it was like, okay, his grandfather was one of the ones who helped her do her dirt to get her son in power. So he was one of her puppets. So it was like, and then his mom. So that was something that she thought she could use, to control. And she had she knew, without them really saying it, that once we Song got into power, they were going to kill the king, and she didn't care because she thought. And I'm like, do you really think they're going to let you live though?
Well, so like I didn't necessarily get that feeling because I didn't get the feeling that she like, now I agree with you on if she could keep the power and get rid of her son, she would have in some way, shape, or form. Now, kill him, I don't necessarily know. But she knew that her only way to power was her son. And I think even when she found out that Yusung wasn't her grandson, the only thing that would do was that would take away the more power that she wanted, because she fought so hard and used everybody that she possibly could in order to try to make Yusung the crown prince. Like that was her goal, because if she made him the crown prince, you got to remember the deal that she made with consort Wang is she would never be queen. She would never be queen. She would stay a concubine in order for the queen dowager to have even more power to fully control the palace. And to announce that would mean her losing all of her future power that she was going to get. Like, because she was looking for the future, and the future was, I have to control the crown prince, I have to control the crown princess. That's the reason why she wanted somebody that she can control from someone who was on her side. And I never saw her even for once saying that until she realized that it was already revealed. Like never once did I think like, oh, she's gonna reveal that that's not. Nope. I was just like, oh, she gonna keep that. She gonna keep that to herself, because that is the only son. That's the only one she had that she felt had a chance of being crown prince that she could control. Because you got to realize, who were the other ones? One of them was the one that she betrayed, Bogum. And then you have the grand princes, the two grand princes. So the only one that she could actually control was Yusung. That's the only one. She had no other choice.
Song, look at me. Song Young. I can't. Yeah, him.
Song
The one that Song Young, the one who becomes the crown prince. He had her number from the start, because from the day he came back to the palace, she had her foot on his throat, and he always rebelled against that shit. He called her out, and he just looked at her, and that's part of the reason why when he found out that she had quote unquote picked his wife, that he didn't want to. He liked her because they had met before, and they, but he didn't want to have anything to do with her because he thought she was a puppet of his grandmother. And then when he found out that his mom, and I love the way the queen played the queen dowager on that. Mm-hmm. I love the way she played her on that and got her to actually become.
She said, "I'm going to use her power to choose the person that I want."
Yeah, and that was amazing. So, but yeah, So I get it, but I still think, and I understand why she didn't tell. Like, the moment when she didn't say anything, and it's like, okay, so even at that point, another subtle hint that they knew, because she's the one who set it up, because the queen was the one who set up the second test. It's like the queen even knew or suspected that Wee Song wasn't really the king's son, but she never said anything.
I didn't get that.
I kind of got the feeling that she did.
With the heir thing, I think she was just focused on proving, because of the birth of Sung Nam and the rumors that have been going around. She was just on the focus of, because if you look, she didn't choose just all the grand princes and then just bring in Yu Sung. Like it was all his sons from the different moms. It was just proving her son. I don't think she knew anything about it until it got closer to like the end of the series, where you got more into physician Wan's history, where you start to realize like, oh, like that's not even his kid. But when she did the heir thing, I think her focus was on Sung Nam and just proving that he was. And she was of the mindset, I'm gonna choose all the other sons that are his. Like, yeah, I don't know. I got the feeling like she was more focused on proving her son was biological than thinking that Yu Sung wasn't.
I think she suspected. I agree with you that I don't think she knew for sure until you got more into position one, but I think she suspected. And it was just a look that she gave when the queen was like, "Yeah, they're all his sons," and it's just kind of like, "Oh, okay." But I don't think because he. But what I don't understand is if they were born around the same time, the morning, or conceived around the same time as the morning period for the prince, how is he the first one that he held? If the other, so was the
No,
first?
Sung Nam was the only one who was conceived during the morning, I think, of the king. I think he was conceived during the morning of the king.
I
And
thought
not
I want to say we saw. Okay, maybe I misunderstood because I
yeah,
want to say we
Yu
saw
Sung was his the first son that he held. Yu Sung was the oldest.
okay.
Yeah, Yu Sung was the oldest, and then it was the first crown prince, who was the second oldest, who was born of the queen, and then whoever else came next. But then Sung Nam, when he was conceived, it was during the morning time, and that was the rule on it. But she was like, I was already pregnant before the morning period started, so it's not like he was born in evil or something.
Yeah, which is crazy. Like I'm just like, okay, that's too much. Like when does it matter? Like his dad died. Of course he gonna need some comfort. But that's just me. And then of course I was like, yeah, and then that's the Queen Dowager just being a bitch because she always hated her daughter-in-law. Um,
Didn't
and
choose her
hmm,
because she didn't choose her.
so it was just like, yeah. Um, but what did you think of the king? We've kind of alluded to him a little bit.
Um, I so they said it more than really showed it, but I definitely did get the sense of him being a very benevolent king and loving his country and being a really good king for the 20 years that he ruled. Um, and of course, have secrets in the background. But I never thought that he was like a ditz or evil in any way or anything like that. I think that he was just how I've done what I need to do in order to show people that I deserve this. I deserve the throne, no matter how I got it, that I've done a good job. And that was his whole focus for 20 years, was proving that he deserved the throne. And I think that he really did love his sons, which is hilarious that he only had sons. He had no daughters. I really do think that he loved his sons, but based on, just history and historical fact and just the traditions of that time, he had no say and no hand in raising any of them. Like that's just not what kings did at that time. But you can't take I just get the feeling that he did love his kids. He really did love his kids. And he knew them. Like I think like they didn't have to tell him that the grand princes were who they were. Like I think he knew. Like there's no way that nobody came and told him how the grand princes were or how his other sons. Like he had to have known how Yu Sung was around, but he also couldn't step in because that wasn't the role that he played in the palace.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, we saw he was, he had that entitlement, like since he was the firstborn, even though his mom was the senior concubine, you were not the king, you were not the firstborn of the queen, you know. Um,
Oh, she
and
wasn't queen at the time.
when what?
Hmm?
Huh?
Oh, so based on that, when he was born, it was still she was in line to be the crown princess. She was in line to be the crown princess, and it was only um when he decided to be, so he had concubines before. I'm guessing based on like just the history of it, the king, before he became the crown prince, as a prince, and this was just based on what Muan said when he said he could make his girl a concubine. He had concubines, right? He had a royal concubine, and that was consort Wang. And so when he became crown prince, it was like automatically assumed like she would be crown princess. The queen dowager went to her and said, you know, you're going to be the crown princess because your father is on my side, all of that. And the king stepped over that and said no, and he chose somebody completely different. And that was who ultimately became queen from a
Because
more
oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say because she had no connection whatsoever to the queen dowager, and the king knew that his son was poisoned. You got to remember, he knew that and changed the death, basically the death certificate on how he died. But he knew that his son was poisoned, and I mean, he had to have known. Like, I feel like they all knew that what the queen dowager did. And so in order, but you can't take that away from her because her son is now the crown prince because he won the contest when they had it that time. And so I think that he chose the one person who will never be under her thumb. And that's why she hated the queen more than anything, because if you can't control the queen, then you can't control her kids. And that's ultimately what it was. But Consort Wang was supposed to be the crown princess. And that's why he was of the mindset, Yu Sung was of the mindset of, I'm firstborn, this is supposed to be my crown. Like, this is supposed to be mine. And, you know, that's why he was such a dick.
Yeah, he was an incredible dick, and he had that entitlement. And then come to find out, you not even well, technically, if you want to get, if he wasn't heir, but he wasn't the king's heir. He was the heir to the original, the OG line of succession, and that had been deposed thanks to the Queen Dowager and her evil machinations. Like, she was just an evil bitch, and she would stop at nothing. But she made for a great villain. And you understood like the way she went out. It was the honorable, I guess, quote unquote thing, because considering her whole world was going to fall apart, and she also saved her son the trouble of having to kill her, because he was going to have to kill her. Because there was no way, because he was trying to get around it when he said that she was just going to be confined to her quarters. But I'm like, dude, you know your mama, and leaving her confined to her quarters, that ain't gonna stop shit. Like, so
they were all about killing back then. They just killed
yeah.
everybody.
So,
Remember when they wanted to kill the grand heir?
yes, and he was a baby,
like
like
he's
a
a
little
child.
toddler. So, and but it's just like, and you could see history kind of repeating itself, because they were like I said, they were coming for the queen, and they were coming for her kids, and they were going to wipe out that whole line if they had to. And and it kind of made you fearful, and you understood physician Juan's uh his thirst for vengeance. But it's like, dude, go after the queen dowager. You don't have to go after every fucking body. Like, yeah, it was just it got into a little bit of dynasty, old school dynasty, and kind of like those.
That's how they did it back then for power. I do want to
Yeah.
say, like, I had some favorite scenes, but I also had some real sad scenes, or scenes that I have to skip over. So every time I rewatch this, there are scenes that I always skip over. I can't watch it after watching it the first time. And the scenes that I hated the most throughout the whole entire series, I cannot watch them after watching them the first time, is the crown prince, the first one, and just treating him, and you seeing him like slowly, like he's in pain and he's slowly dying and he's bleeding to death inside, because this physician is literally puncturing his organs. And I just thought that was so, like, oh, it just broke my heart. Like, I was just like, oh my God, could you imagine, like, sitting there and not realizing that the person that you trust to take care of your kids are actually doing the opposite and not taking care of him, but actually slowly killing him and then poisoning him at the same time. Like, so I can't watch those scenes. Like, I skip over them because I was just like, that's just too much. It's just too much. It was such a heartbreaking scene when he does die and she's not even able to be there for his last moments, but also when she finally hears the story of how he killed her son, and just the queen, like, breaking down over that. I was just like, oh my God. I was like, nope, I'm never watching this part again.
Wow. Yeah. I fast forwarded through a lot of the contest part. I'm like, okay, I really don't care. Like at that point, I kind of knew who was going to become the crown prince. So when it got to him and Bogum, I loved how they forged a relationship, how they went from reluctant allies to actually being brothers. And you kind of saw the same type of the way the original crown prince kind of took him under his wing and became that big brother, and how he became like the crown prince's most trusted confidant. You
Mm-hmm.
saw that happening between So Young and Bogum, and I love that part. I love that relationship that they forged. So I would watch those things. But yeah, that other, I'm like, okay, this is boring. But you know, you understood like when he told Weesaw not to take the dude back to the palace, and Weesaw just thought he knew it all because he was so quote unquote smart. And it's like, dude, do you realize what you're fucking doing? So,
Yeah.
um,
Or
but yeah,
Prince Simso and his attempted suicide over what
oh
his mama
God,
did. I was
that was
like,
heartbreaking.
oh, his mama, like when she like went off and the queen is like, don't do it. Don't, like, she was telling her, don't do it. Don't do it. Like, do you not see how fragile this boy is right now? Don't do it. And she still like went around the queen and said like, you're an imbecile and I wish you were dead. And I was just like, oh my gosh. But like the queen said, you got the biggest punishment that you could possibly have in seeing, you know, what that you led your son to um try to commit suicide just based on, you know, your words and just how hateful they were. But that was also like a very strong scene, um that episode right there, dealing with all of that and how Simso and how, you know, just fragile he became after the nagging of his mom for the whole season.
Yeah, and it was like, um, because he was the one who was probably the most independent, and he didn't want it. No, he didn't really want it, but he just wanted to prove that he could do it. Like he just wanted to prove that he was smart, that he could, you know.
No, that was
But
Bogum.
no, that was
Simpson was
Bogum
only, yeah, Simpson was only doing it because his mother
because of his
forced him
mom
to,
was
but
him
he
to do.
never
Okay,
wanted it. He did not want it at all. He was only doing it because his mother forced him to do it.
and Bogum was the one he didn't really want it until the Queen Dowager put in his head that she
Yeah.
could get it for him. He was doing it to prove that he was worthy because of who his mom was. And so I was just like, okay. And but yeah, gosh, I don't know if I had a favorite episode. I just had favorite scenes, and I think I mentioned them. Like, I love the scenes where the brothers were all together. You know, the queen and her sons when they were all together. I love the scenes when they flash back to So Sung and the OG Crown Prince as kids. That shit was hilarious. Like that was so cute. So cute. I like the scenes with him and the Crown Princess once they were figuring out how they wanted to have their relationship. Um, yeah, and just the queens with her sons, just handling it the way you saw her being a queen, and you also saw her being a mother, and her balancing that, and just her figuring out ways to help them. When you know, like she could have stepped in and said, "No, you cannot be with Cholo," and she could have gotten rid of the kid, and she didn't. Just her letting her sons figure it out for themselves. I love that, and her giving them those life lessons without them really knowing, like, oh damn, she just taught us a lesson. Like, okay. So those were some of my favorites just to
I like some of my favorites was, so one of my funny, like I cracked up when I saw this scene, and I do it every time, is the ice bath scene.
oh god,
um,
yes.
when she like tells them get in, and then she's just like, "Where's your older brother?" And they're like, "Oh, he stayed behind." But as soon as he shows up, they're like, "Brother, come save us!" And then they all four of them end up in the ice bath. I thought that was a really really funny scene. I also, very very sad scene, but I think the scene where Simso's mother finally like hears the queen and says like, I'm here for you, like we're not in competition, like at first you're a mom before anything else. And when her son goes to take his name off for the running of crown prince, and she slowly walks behind him, and so basically letting him do it on his own. Another one is when the queen, like when the king allows the queen to go in and talk to the scholars, and she calls
Oh
them
yeah.
out. Yeah, she calls them out, and she really speaks to them, and she says, she's like, I'm not gonna tell on you. Like, I don't care. But what I do want you to do is make your own decisions, because one day you're going to be basically telling, you're going to be in the positions of your fathers, and you want to be the honest ministers that you can be, because you're going to be the ones helping to run this country, and really speaking to them, and then walking out and letting them make the decision themselves, and then seeing the result of them choosing who was best for the position rather than who could give them the most. And then another scene was when Prince Yusung had to bow to the new crown prince after all that mess he was talking, and you talk about his mama all the time, and you and your mama still had to bow down to him at the end because he got the position that you wanted, that you claimed was rightfully yours. So those were just some of my favorite scenes from the show. I have a lot more, but those were the ones that really stick out to me, that I find to be significant. Even if it seemed insignificant, I still think that they played a role in the story.
Oh yeah, because when the scholars come out and say, "We will not accept any more food."
Yeah. Oh wait, another one. Okay, it's funny to me. I thought he was the cutest, most adorable thing ever. Was two of them. So one is the chubby prince.
Oh yes.
I
Mother,
was
I am
sorry.
going to exercise from now on so I can lose weight and be strong and tall. But
I
I'm
loved it
hungry.
when he was running around the courtyard, and his mom is like, "You're gonna tire yourself out. Aren't you hungry?" And he's just like, "No, I'm gonna be tall." He's like, "Mom, I'm going on a diet," and he like taps his stomach, and she's just like, "But I think you're handsome just how you are." And he was like, "Ma, I'm hungry," and she's like, "Let's go have some meat." Like, I thought he was the cutest thing ever, and then him being close to the youngest grand prince. I forgot what his name was, but the youngest grand prince, and when he was going off, instead of going and doing his role in the contest, and he was just like, "No, I'm gonna go ahead," and he was just like, "Well, I know where I'm going. They got some real good dumplings," and he was just like, "Lead the way." He was the cutest. And then the grand heir, every time he said uncle, yopo, like, I just thought he was the cutest thing whenever he called Songnam uncle. Or maybe it could just be the word, but just how he said yopo, I was just like, oh, he's so adorable. Sorry, those are like the adorable scenes, but I was just like, they are so cute. Like, there were serious scenes, intrigue, very interesting, but there are also light moments, and I enjoyed the light moments just as much as the intrigue and the emotional moments that were throughout the series.
Yeah, because no one's life is all drama and doom and gloom
No, although
unless you're
some
the
people would want you to think that.
yeah, unless you're the Queen Dowager. That bitch, she was just like one of the Dementors from Harry Potter. Whenever she came around, it's just like, oh fuck.
Just brought
Um,
down the whole mood.
yeah, but okay. So, question: do you think there should be a season two?
It's a Korean drama, so there ain't gonna be no season two. But do I want a season two? Yes. And for the season two, to answer your next question, would be I would love for a focus to be on the princes. For the parents to kind of take a background role and see how they navigate, because we have to remember, while it's like 11 of them, right? So we only got to meet a few, but it's like 11 of the princes. And I would love to see like what intrigue would come about with the new age, with the crown prince taking over and on the throne, and with the princess. But also he has to have kids. Like, he's going to be pressured into having kids. So is she going to have a kid, or is he going to have to take a concubine? And then what about the rest of the princes who were on Yusung's side? What's going to happen with them? Their mama changed their mind. So it'd be a whole different show, of course. But I would love to have a show with that, because I think I have watched a lot of historical dramas, and it's very few of them where you see the bond that is there in this show. And also, the realistic relationships that were portrayed in the show. Like sometimes it did get a little lifetimey. I'll agree with you in that. But overall, there were genuine relationships that were developed, like even between the queen and the concubines. There were relationships and friendships that were developed. And I would love to see that with the younger generation, if that makes sense. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, it does.
You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So yeah, I would love a season 2, but I guess it would be a whole different show with just the crown prince and the other princes and how their life goes within the palace.
Yeah, I'm gonna surprise you. I thought that this would have the perfect ending, and now that you say it, that would be an interesting. And like you said, I guess it would be a different show, but that would be intriguing to see that and to see what happens. Because something tells me Wee Song is not as humbled as he seems
His
by
mama
his
went
mom.
crazy though. His mama did go
Yeah.
crazy.
So, and it seems like after she died, he would be all about the revenge or something like that. So,
Yeah, you're right.
um, because, he feels like it was his rightful position because of who his actual family was. And with the queen regret, would that be her regret in keeping him alive? Although she only did it because she promised his grandmother that she would. That was the favor that she owed Queen Yoon, that
And you gotta remember the
unspoken.
grandmother ends up back in the palace.
Yeah. So, but she killed herself, doesn't she?
No, she didn't kill herself. She keeps herself alive just because Yu Sung is alive. But she's now back to being the queen dowager in the palace.
So, yeah, it's intriguing. So I think if they played on those things, that would be more interesting. But other than that, I'm satisfied with the way it ended. And it was actually pretty good. Don't get any ideas for any more period dramas. They are not my thing. Uh,
No, I think we're one and done because I've had others, but I just found it to be so good that I was just like, you know what? I would like us to review this one. That's the only reason why, because I've had others that I've really, really loved. I would never suggest for you watching. So
yeah,
this is gonna be the one and done. But thank you
because
for reviewing it.
you were so welcome, and it wasn't bad. But like I said, I'm just for someone who loves history, a history major.
Not a
I
yeah.
I'm not a fan of period dramas, regardless of the genre. It's just I don't know what it is. But anyway, so how are you rating this?
So based on how much I've loved it, I'm going to rate Under the Queen's Umbrella 5 popcorns. Um, like yeah, I just loved it. Like I've said it throughout the whole review and conversation that we've had. I really, really enjoyed it. I've watched it over and over again like 15 times with Korean with subtitles as well as the English dubbed, and I've never gotten tired of watching it. So it was one of the best dramas that I saw from 2022 because it did premiere last year on Netflix. I don't think we said that, but it's currently streaming on Netflix. So 5 popcorns because I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm telling everybody to watch it. What about you, Eddie?
I'm gonna give it 3.75, and I loved it. It was really good. I've even recommended it to some people, some of my friends who have gotten hooked on K dramas, and it was really good. It was just a little lifetimey, and like I said, the thing that kept it from getting 4, and I know it seems like a nitpick. God dang that makeup! I'm like, come on now. Why are y'all doing my queen like this? That makeup job, it was so bad. And I was like, I can't. And sometimes it was so bad to the point where it was distracting. It took away from everything else. And I was just like, yeah, that's bad. So that
Y'all, she
knocked me down.
nitpicking. Eddie is nitpicking, y'all.
It was distracting to me, and it knocked it down because the queen was a beautiful woman, and the queen was like my favorite. And I'm like, y'all, why y'all doing her like this? Like, come on. And I looked, and I really did pay attention, and she was the only one that had that bad ass makeup job, and I'm just like, fuck. So anyway, but yeah, for if you want to see like a modern twist on old school 80s soap like Dallas Dynasty, for all my old heads who love those nighttime dramas that were just like that, or you know
It is way better than any of those shows.
Wait, you didn't let me finish.
Okay, go ahead.
A throwback to that kind of intrigue and backstabbing, um, then this has that show. From watching the reruns of those old shows and just how corny they are in today's world, yes, this is much better. But it has that, like today's nighttime shows, they don't really have that type of intrigue and backstabbing and just that true, because the Queen Dowager, she would be like a J.R. Ewing type for,
I agree with you on
one of
that. Yep. Mm-hmm.
one of those old school. So that's what I mean by that comparison. But the corniness of it now, like watching those shows now, how they seem kind of corny, no. But yeah, so I would highly recommend it. Just ignore the queen's bad makeup job if you can. It was just really distracting to me. So much so that I noted it several times. So it wasn't like a one and done. I'm like, oh, okay, this could. And then I'm thinking, did they film all these things on the same day? Because this is the same horrible makeup job. But anyway, um, so that does it for this week's episode of the Popcorn Wind Down. Be sure to like, listen, follow, subscribe, comment, do all of the above anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast because we just got it like that. We international, y'all. We all over the place. You can also keep up on the latest in entertainment and pop culture news at the popcornwinddown.com.
Pop,
That's
pop,
it.
pop,
That's
pop,
the plug. Poppy pop, pop, pop. Thank you as always. And be sure to join us next week when we review another K drama. We're in our K drama bag, y'all. But this one is so good. Part one and part two, and I consider it a spoiler. So just watch it before next week so you can keep up with us. But we are doing part one and part two of The Glory, and I, for one, cannot wait to see how it turns out. I've watched part one. Have you watched part two yet?
I started it, but I haven't finished it yet.
Okay. So yeah, after we do this and after I take the baby to puppy school, he's in puppy school, y'all, and he's doing good ish. Good ish.
Good ish.
Good ish. So after I take the baby to puppy school, that is my goal to come back and just binge, like just finish watching The Glory. So until next time, I'm Eddie.
And I'm Tammy. Bye.
Peace.